Would you like to be someone who understands the complexity of life and its dynamics? Then listen to this entire video where I explain the fundamental distinction in life, which sort of is the foundation of all of life's complexities. So, before we get into this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's go. Now, everything in life is sort of balanced. There's sort of seemingly nothing that is 100% of one thing. For example, there are men and there are women. There is lightness, there is darkness, there is day and there is night. There's this continuous theme of two different poles that balance each other. And there is always a polar opposite. So when you have day, you have night. And this is necessary. Here's the key. It's necessary because it gives the universe a dimension. If there was only one pole, there would be no room for existence because all you have is sort of one dimension. And this is a very metaphorical idea, but I think it's relatively accurate, I think. So it's actually a combination of suffering, for example, and well-being that makes life meaningful and interesting, because if it was only well-being, you wouldn't be able to value the well-being because it has no point of comparison. And if life was only suffering, life would be miserable because all you do is suffer. So both of these possibilities would not work, let's say. It would not be able to sort of exist. Now, opposites are very necessary for dimension, because if you have one pole, like I said, one pole, you have no dimension. But if you have two poles and you draw them apart, you suddenly have space, a dimension. And opposites are necessary in life for dimension, in other words, our existence. And I do believe that life is sort of a dance between two opposites, two extremes, and where you are balancing between them, that's sort of where you lie. And sometimes you tilt too far to one side and sometimes you tilt too far to the other. And when you tilt too far, you lose sort of connection to the reality of life, which is that there are opposites, because you sort of radicalize to one side and you sort of start to neglect the other opposite, which is still there, and that's quite dangerous. Like, for example, Dr. Jordan Peterson has a metaphor with life or the universe being a snake, and the snake moves like this, and the earth or life is sort of situated on the back of the snake, and it moves. And in order to stick to reality and sort of to stay on top and not sort of die, you need to hold on to the snake, the nature, the truth of reality that's moving between two poles like this. And if you tilt too far to one side, you lose grip and you slip off. And that would sort of equate with a downfall of some sort. And that's dangerous, that should be avoided. But if you stick on the back of the snake and recognize that life is moving between two poles and it's not one-dimensional, then, well, you don't fall off, let's say. And it seems as if you can never really be entirely certain about something. It's because everything is neither black nor entirely white. It seems to be a mixture. And that is why life is so complicated. And here I have an example relating to mathematics where, let's say, if life was a full number, just one single number, like 1, then it would be obvious. You just have 1 and nothing else, that's it. But it's not. However, if you measure something on a scale between two numbers, let's say 1 and 10, then the number of possibilities between 1 and 10 is infinite, and that's why it's so complex, because you could have a number that is 1.12, and you could have a number that is 1.124, and then a number that is 1.1247, then a number that's 1.1243, and you could keep going, and the number of possibilities between the scale, because you suddenly have two numbers, is infinite between them. And that's why it's so complex. And this is the case for life, because we always have two dimensions, and you automatically have a scale then between these two dimensions, these two extremes, these poles. And that means that any variable in life could be, is measured, or the value of a variable couldn't be infinite and has an infinite number of variations. And that's why it's so complex, because it is not obvious where this variable lies, because it is probably always slightly different to how you interpret it, because we don't have the brain capacity to measure where a variable, or the value of a variable lies in the scale. What it is precisely, we can only sort of estimate it, and there is estimation error always involved in it. If you sort of know econometric sort of lingo, there's always estimation error involved, and that's why we suffer, in a sense, because we are quite limited and we don't know the real value of something. So if we conclude this video, the key here is that if you want to understand the nature of reality, it's important to realize that life is a scale between two extreme values, two poles, and it is infinitely complex because you have so many variations between these two poles, and we don't have what it takes to estimate it. And life is always, it may not be in equilibrium, it is not perfectly balanced, but it is somewhere between two extremes. And if you lose touch with the reality of this duality, then you might radicalize and actually lose grip of the truth, let's say, and you might fall off the snake's back, or you might fall off the back of life, and you might suffer or bear the price of that, an unwanted price, let's say. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.